about. But Pink says that right-brainers and the creative people are going to be the ones who are the decision makers in the next century. And I think he's got a real point to make on that. Now, Ken Robinson's first book, one of his first books was Out of Our Minds. This is one of the funniest books, and I brought it with me. I read this on the plane, and I was laughing so hard, people stopped me and asked me what I was reading, and I said an education book, and they all went, oh. But this is one of the funniest reads and talks so much about what the nature of building creativity in the school is. And if you really want a good read and you're stuck on a plane for 33 hours, this is the book to read. Now, 5 Minds for the Future. Howard Gardner is an educator out of Harvard who works with a program called Project Zero, and it's very influential in the United States. But he's talked a lot about multiple intelligences. Have you all done any work in multiple intelligences? And basically what he says is that everybody's smart. We're all just smart in different ways. And he has 8 different types of smarts that he thinks people are, but he's actually been expanding that more. So I want you to think about that for a minute as you teach in your classroom. There are all kinds of kids, and my husband is a prime example. My husband's an airline pilot, and he's always telling me how smart I am. And, you know, I'm thinking, if I were, he's a very practical man. You give him a hammer, a nail, a board, he'll build a room for you. You tell him that you've got something that's broken and he can fix it. You put him in front of a panel of instruments and he can read everything there. But he doesn't consider himself very smart, which just amazes me. If I were on a deserted desert island, I want that man with me, because he will be the one that figures out how to get the coconut and get me off. And this is, you know, I'm always telling him, you're smart in different ways from me. I'm book smart. I can remember things. But if you give me a hammer and a nail, I'm going to pound my finger. I'm not going to hit that nail. And I've been known to do it. So people are smart in different ways. You see those children in your classroom. You know, when Gerber this morning was talking about little Clint and the turtle story, that just really touched my heart, because I thought, I've had so many Clints. I've had so many Clints. Only mine's name was Kevin Holliday. And everybody has one that you think, I'm going to kill that kid before the end of the year. I'm going to kill him. And somewhere down the pipe, that child will come out and do something that really touches your heart. Kevin Holliday was not a little child, though. He was an 8th grader, my first year of teaching, and he was my heckler in the class. One of the kids that always makes your life miserable. And I remember my first week of teaching, I went out in the hall and I was banging my head on the wall going, I'm going to kill myself. And then I thought, no, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to go back in there and I am going to kill that boy. One of my little 8th grade girls came out and she looked out and she said, Miss Temple, are you crying? And I said, no, I'm just deciding how I'm going to motivate Kevin the Holiday. And this little girl gave me a really good comeback and she said, you're not the first. So, but all of these books are really interesting reads. If you were going to pick one book out of this, I'd say read Out of Our Minds. Because it's just a fun read. The Element really talks more about taking creativity and making what you do your passion in life. But these others, Chicks in Baha'i is more of a theory book. And it's really interesting, but if you're not interested in theory, but you want more practical application, read A Whole New Mind, The Element, or Out of Our Minds. Now, there are a few misconceptions that I think we need to talk about for creativity, and this is where I want us to start thinking about some dialogue. So let's talk about this first. First, I hear this all the time. There are only a few people who are really creative. They're your artists. They're the people that you keep in that little special place where they get to wear jeans and they don't have to wear a tie. And they look like they're having fun. The rest of us don't get to do that. Now, how many of you have heard that? Yes. Okay. Do you believe that? No. No. Everybody has a creative spark. Everyone does. All right. Creativity is about special activities. It's something special that you do. How do you feel about that? Look, when I get up in the morning, my brain starts going the minute I get out of the bed. How am I going to walk from here to there over the pile of clothes that I left on the floor last night when I was too tired to do anything else? Your brain starts pumping the minute you wake up. You are constantly problem solving, and that's what creativity is about. Now the next one, and I love this one because I get this all the time. When I tell people I'm an art professor, they'll go, oh, you're one of those. And I think, yes, I am, and proud to say it. Creativity is about letting yourself go, kind of running around the room and going a bit crazy. And I've had people tell me that many times. Well, we know what you people do over there. How do you feel about that? Is creativity that kind of activity? It can be. It can be. Sometimes it can be. And but I'll tell you, some of the most creative moments I have are when I'm very quiet and very still. And usually it comes to me at 2 o'clock in the morning, between 2 and 4. My brain will start pumping, and all of these things will start coming to mind, which is why I've learned to sleep on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. But that's when my creative juices really start flowing, is in the middle of the night when it's quiet. There's no distractions. There's nobody saying, I need you to look at this. Can you do that? Will you answer this phone call? So sometimes it takes a little bit of crazy, but it takes quiet reflection. Creativity happens in all kinds of environments. Now, we know that we're going to have to start doing some things, but why do you think it's really essential? Now, this is where we've got to start thinking as educators. Why is it essential to promote creativity? Any ideas? Oh, come on, you guys know some things about why we've got to do this.
To develop growth of your thinking skills, of your productions, of your own interpersonal skills.
That's one. What else?
Exploring your own limits.
Well, it's a good way to learn. What else?
To cope with the changing world.
To cope with a changing world. What else?
Monotony is
It does. It does. It comes very naturally. What else?
monotony is boring. So
Be
you
able
want,
to
you want change.
Okay. What else?
accept challenges.
To accept challenges.
And to explore one's own limit. How
Yeah,
far we
listen.
can go.
This group didn't say anything 2 minutes ago.
Problem solving.
There you go. Come on. You all know what they are. There's lots of things there. We've got to do this. As educators, you know, every single one of us have the opportunity every day to touch the life of a child. And we have the opportunity to help them grow and think. And I'll tell you the other thing that we really have to start thinking about is developing our citizenry to question, not to accept anything that comes along, but to question, why do we do this? Why do we have to do this? You're in a very young country that's had a lot of changes. And there are a lot of problems that this country faces, just like any country does. But there are things that we need to be able to question creatively, find solutions, problem solve, and see how we're going to get through this mess we call life. And I'll tell you, we know why it's essential, because if we fail, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our children? Are they going to have a better life?
They'll be
No.
stuck in a rut.
Well, and everyone wants, every generation wants a better life for their children. We want them to have opportunities. We want them to be able to grow. And 100 years ago, that was fine to say, yep, they can go through 5th grade. They can get a job in some kind of industry where they do hand work. And that's okay. They can make a living on that. That's not going to happen anymore. You can't make a decent living doing that. Now, why is it necessary? Now, one of the things that I see a lot in adults, they will come to me, and I get this all the time when I say, I'm an art professor, and they'll say, oh, you know, I can't draw a stick. I hear that all the time. And my response always is, that's because I wasn't your teacher. Because everybody can draw. Drawing is an acquired skill. How many of you have ever seen people who have lost their arms and they draw with their toes or with their teeth? That is an acquired skill. Drawing is about what's in here, not what's in your hand. It's an acquired skill. Now, some people draw intuitively. You have Michelangelos, you have Leonardos who are born with certain abilities that are greatly enhanced. But everybody can draw. It's just somewhere along the way, we seem to start thinking, it's not that good. but it's a developed skill. Now, and kids really start, when they're little, they talked about that a lot this morning. They're buzzing with ideas. They come up with all kinds of things. But when you get to, say, middle school kids, how many of you are elementary teachers? Lower elementary. How about middle? Any secondary teachers? Any school administrators? Okay, now I'm going to talk to school administrators some more in a minute because I've been there and I feel your pain. Know what it's like. We have to think about what's involved with promoting creativity. Now we've talked, everyone's creative. They're creative in different ways. But let's talk for a minute about, can creativity be developed? Or do you just get to a certain point where you plateau off? What do you think? You think you can develop creativity?
Yes.
Who else?
Yes.
Okay, what are some ways that you think you can develop creativity?
It will give room to the children to have their own interests and come out of their own interest and tell you what they want to do.
Okay, how many of you feel comfortable doing that? Asking kids what they want to do? How many of you feel like when they're little you need to tell them what to do?
Well, I've always felt that whenever I was taking a class and I would give some sort of theme and instruction and then leave the learning part to the children. I thought that they were coming up with much more than me. For example, when I was taking class 3 and in science there was this lesson where they had to draw a skeleton. So what was traditionally being done and what I saw my colleagues doing was that the children were asked to get a skeleton drawn. And they take the copies home and they have some adult doing it for them and then they presented it was accepted because it was closest to the skeleton. So instead of doing that, I asked them, I said, okay, let's start feeling and wherever the joint is, you'll have, what do you think the joint is? And they sort of, decided or they do, and it was not perfect, but it was coming in the right direction. And so they started feeling their body and started doing the skeleton. And so there were people, skeletons with 60 ribs also, but which was all right at that stage because that was not the point.
Right.
But I felt that everybody came up with the concept that was to be learned at that stage. And then, placing organs inside, and that I felt that, at that level, the objective was to teach the...
You're talking about the process, not the product. And process is really important, but we're a product-oriented society. When our parents come into our classrooms, we want to have something pretty up. And that's really difficult because you're torn between those two things. You want to show that your students are excelling in things. But the process is very, very important. Because just like what she was saying about learning to draw the skeleton, well, so what if they have 60 ribs? They're learning they have ribs. That comes later. You can build on those skills. But they've got to be able to buy into the idea of, oh yeah, there is something there that keeps all the stuff inside. So that's part of what we have to do. Now, I love this quote. It's from Alice in Wonderland. And it said, basically she says, "There's no use in trying," said Alice. "One can't believe impossible things." "I dare say you haven't had much practice," said the Queen. "When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast."